Imagine a different scene. A woman moves her thumb across her phone, assembling her days with precision. A cafe meetup, an industry mixer, a crowded apartment filled with noise and laughter. From the outside, her life looks rich with interaction. To her friends, she appears active, integrated, alive. A person surrounded by people must be doing something right. Arthur Schopenhauer would disagree. Not out of misanthropy, and not because he despised company. His judgment cuts deeper. He would say she is mistaken because she has never examined what constant interaction quietly extracts from her. Most human suffering, Schopenhauer observed, does not arise from fate, chance, or circumstance. It emerges from contact, from proximity, from entanglement with others. The question, then, is not whether social life exists, but what it costs. The common belief is that interaction creates bonds. Schopenhauer saw something else. He saw negotiation, adjustment, continuous self-editing. What is presented as friendship often becomes a carefully maintained surface. What looks like popularity slowly turns into imitation. What feels like openness hardens into performance. Social life doesn't reward truth. It rewards adaptability. It doesn't strengthen individuality. It dulls it. Walk into any cafe, any corporate gathering, any weekend celebration. Look closely. You will find people who have replaced inner stability with external affirmation. They confuse chatter with closeness, recognition with meaning, acceptance with satisfaction. Group messages become substitutes for loyalty. Professional events are mistaken for self-development. Silence is abandoned for noise, and noise is mistaken for vitality. They tell themselves they are happy. Schopenhauer would say they are anesthetized. He understood something uncomfortable. Collective life survives only through limitation. Every group demands concession. Every gathering requires restraint. To belong, one must compress oneself into a tolerable shape. Over time, this compression becomes habitual, then invisible. What these people call choice is often obedience. They believe they socialize freely, yet they move according to instinctive imitation. The pull of the group governs them more than reflection ever did. Here is the harsh reality Schopenhauer pointed toward. Every exchange has a price. Genuineness is swapped for approval. Calm is exchanged for recognition. Inner coherence is traded for temporary inclusion. The self is diluted slowly, politely, willingly. And yet, this sacrifice is misunderstood. People assume compliance earns respect. It does not. Endless agreement signals emptiness. A person without friction appears hollow. Someone who never resists inspires neither admiration nor trust. Their presence feels smooth, but forgettable. From this error emerges a deeper confusion. The performer mistakes the act for identity. The role becomes the person. Schopenhauer described this as one of the most refined illusions humans fall into. The belief that they are choosing their lives, when in fact they are reenacting a script written by habit and expectation. Observers notice more than is assumed. The perceptive recognize the disguise. The insightful notice the confinement behind it. And those who truly understand choose distance, not out of bitterness, but clarity. For Schopenhauer, withdrawal was not escape, it was liberation. Solitude was not emptiness, it was the only space where a person could exist without distortion. And this belief did not come from weakness, it came from seeing too clearly. A person remains authentic only while no one is watching. The instant others enter the room, that authenticity comes under pressure. If someone cannot tolerate being alone, they will never understand what independence truly means. Yet the modern social figure breaks this rule relentlessly. She packs her schedule with voices, smothers stillness with sound, and replaces reflection with the reassurance of being surrounded. Her life slowly turns into a spectacle designed for an audience rather than an inner purpose. And when the illusion collapses, it does so violently. There is a reason existence appears shallow to some people. The less developed the mind, the less depth the world seems to contain. Those who chase constant interaction rarely notice this, because distraction feels safer than awareness. Here's the truth that makes people uncomfortable. This lifestyle was not a deliberate decision. It was a seduction. The evening you extended beyond your own desire, the laughter you forced to avoid standing out, the exchange you labeled connection simply because it filled the silence. None of this emerged from conscious judgment. It arose from pressure, from suggestion, from an unexamined craving to belong. You were not acting freely, you were being pulled. Schopenhauer identified this pull as a form of inner vacancy, a restlessness that seeks relief in others rather than resolution within. Few thinkers understood the cost of this better than he did. Money can be earned again. Knowledge can be regained through effort. Health may return through discipline or treatment. But time, once spent, is unrecoverable. It disappears without negotiation. Most people never approach social life with intention. They enter it impulsively. They are carried by momentum, intoxicated by presence, and neglect the essential questions. Do these exchanges actually enrich me, or do they merely shield me from quiet? Am I sharpening my mind or numbing it with trivial talk? What parts of myself am I surrendering simply to remain acceptable? Is this decision rooted in choice or in fear disguised as habit? What remains unseen until damage is done is this: every social commitment is a philosophical trade, and freedom is always part of the payment. At best, the crowd distracts you while your hours evaporate unnoticed. At worst, it empties you and leaves behind the bitter realization that you handed your life away increment by increment. The impulse toward constant company has no concern for your mental clarity. It does not protect your autonomy. It drags you toward noise, feeds you insignificance, and quietly erodes your inner world before you realize what is happening. Those with real understanding move differently. They do not define themselves by the size of their network. They do not seek gatherings to escape their own thoughts. They recognize that presence is not the same as intimacy, and noise is not proof of meaning. This is where the true risk of social existence becomes visible. Most people ask only how to fill their hours. A capable mind asks how to employ them. Schopenhauer saw clearly that isolation and self-command cannot be separated. The moment your time is surrendered to constant interruption, your mind ceases to be fully your own. Modern life encourages the opposite. Evenings are donated to conversation without substance. Mornings are spent recovering from overstimulation. Days dissolve into fragments, stitched together by obligations that serve no inner aim. And this is what follows when you become endlessly reachable, always agreeable, permanently available. You begin to draw people who treat you as a container for their excess. Not companions. That is the pleasant fantasy. What they seek is access. A steady supply of your hours, your awareness, your mental energy. They are not interested in your insight. They require your availability. Your stillness has no value to them. Your time does. They do not strengthen your inner world. They hollow it out slowly until there is nothing left that belongs solely to you. And all the while he believes he is succeeding. After all, he is labeled outgoing, approachable, easy to be around. What he fails to notice is the quiet theft taking place. The very hours capable of refining his intellect are being siphoned away under the disguise of sociability. Schopenhauer recognized this state as a particular kind of blindness, a condition where distraction conceals dependence, where light amusement masks a deep internal void, where applause and approval signal not growth, but decay beginning beneath the surface. In an environment saturated with invitations and trivial encounters, every shared meal becomes depletion. Every polite exchange fractures concentration. Every planned gathering diverts you from your own trajectory. Each meaningless conversation subtracts from the time required for development. And once you present yourself as endlessly accessible, expectation follows immediately. What once felt voluntary begins to solidify into demand. Those who might have walked beside you become burdens you must now carry. Optional ties calcify into duties. This is what Schopenhauer identified as the suffering born from reliance on others. Escape never comes from following the crowd's advice. Foolishness, he observed, is innate. It propagates. It behaves like an infection. And here lies the uncomfortable fact about stupidity. It does not remain isolated. It spreads outward. It contaminates shared spaces. It fills the atmosphere. And without vigilance, clarity suffocates beneath the weight of collective noise. This is because stupidity is not merely personal. It is communal. You cannot out-argue it within a mass. A crowd does not deliberate. You cannot educate it upward. Groups do not learn. They copy. You cannot conquer it by pointing toward reality. It will ridicule truth, bury it under volume, and declare its confusion superior understanding. Schopenhauer summarized this pattern with brutal precision. Those with insight have always articulated the same principles. The majority, being unreflective, has always acted against them. Yet the collective clings to the opposite illusion, that agreement produces truth rather than obscuring it. Observe what becomes of individuals who anchor their thinking to popular sentiment. Independence erodes. Discernment yields to consensus. Judgment becomes hostage to the approval of people who neither comprehend the individual nor wish him well, and who will abandon him the moment he resists their influence. The belief that the mass can supply wisdom is a complete reversal of reality. Clear understanding is born in separation, not immersion. Genuine insight emerges from solitary thought, not echoed opinion. This distinction has immediate consequences. The group will never carry your thinking for you. It moves on impulse, drifting from one fashionable belief to the next, chasing stimulation, chasing novelty. Inclusion is brief. The burden of absorbed foolishness endures. So a trade is made. Autonomy for acceptance, precision for comfort. You hope to gain belonging, yet it evaporates the instant you dissent. Which existence holds real clarity? The one shaped by borrowed convictions, or the one formed in deliberate isolation? Schopenhauer answered without hesitation. The richest portion of a man's life is the time he spends alone. Most individuals labeled as friends are merely familiar faces, pursuing their own advantage under the name of closeness. What people celebrate as the pleasure of companionship is often nothing more than temporary relief from the discomfort of being alone. Society manufactures unease and then sells companionship as the remedy. That is the mechanism most people never notice. And this is where the sentimental myth of friendship collapses under inspection. Friends do not complete you. They impose limits, not only on your schedule, but on your movement, your judgment, and your ability to remain internally consistent. He believes he is accumulating bonds, when in reality he is exchanging self-direction for assurances that often dissolve when tested. Every individual life, examined broadly, resembles a tragedy, Observed closely, it turns into farce. Nowhere is this clearer than in the rituals of social coordination. Evenings are spent adjusting yourself to moods that change faster than your tolerance. Weekends are surrendered to people who will never reorder their lives for you. Principles are softened to preserve alliances that fracture the moment disagreement appears. At the same time, the solitary man allocates his energy differently. He invests in competence. He makes decisions without negotiation. He adapts quickly when circumstances shift. After 2 decades, who possesses greater freedom? But the expense of so-called friendship extends beyond lost hours. Social bonds generate what can only be described as expectation traps. Each commitment tightens the range of possible futures. You hesitate to relocate because it would disrupt others. You avoid radical change because it would destabilize routines people have grown comfortable with. You forego risk because it might disturb the fragile equilibrium of your connections. The independent individual preserves what Schopenhauer valued above all else: self-rule, the capacity to disengage when conditions demand it, the liberty to pursue ideas or directions that ignite curiosity, the decision to place development above obligation. This is not indulgence. It is rational discipline. If life is meant to be shaped through conscious intent rather than unconscious repetition, then protecting independence is not optional, it is duty. What the collective resents most is not a specific belief, but the act of independent thought itself. It is the audacity of someone who refuses to outsource judgment, something the majority has never learned how to do. Schopenhauer offered an uncompromising observation for anyone who attempts to create. Every original undertaking carries friction, uncertainty, and resistance. You are not merely producing something new. You are engaging in conflict with failure, with distraction, with your own constraints. Consider what creation actually entails. You bring an idea into an environment primed to misunderstand it. It must withstand criticism, neglect, fear of inadequacy, and the slow erosion that comes from divided attention. If abandoned, it decays. If overexposed, it deforms. Ability reaches a destination others cannot reach. Exceptional insight reaches one others cannot even perceive. Yet people behave as though broadcasting every thought and seeking constant feedback is harmless, ignoring how approval-seeking siphons concentration and thins originality. The thinker becomes attached to his concept, unaware that incessant input, judgment, and interruption steadily corrode it. Attention and solitude are scarce resources in a social world, and creativity consumes both. You cannot consult an idea before it takes shape, but you can examine your own process with honesty. How much of your work has emerged cleanly, and how much has been delayed, diluted, or distorted by interruption, critique, and ambient noise? And this leads to the philosophical question that finally dismantles the romance of constant sharing and collaboration. Imagine being faced with a single decision. You can allow an idea to form in silence, protecting its shape until it is whole. Or you can release it early into public space and watch it be bent, thinned, and altered by opinion. Which path truly preserves creation? Schopenhauer never claimed that pleasure is non-existent. His argument cuts deeper. Momentary enjoyment is always eclipsed by friction, effort, and resistance. And it is precisely through creation that a person learns how to confront this imbalance rather than flee from it. Authentic creation is born away from crowds. Only in separation does the mind loosen its grip on impulse and rise above mere desire, allowing something enduring to take form, A discerning creator understands that delaying exposure is not cowardice. It is stewardship. To shelter an idea from premature judgment is an act of responsibility. It prevents distortion before the structure is complete. It refuses to let social pressure deform what has not yet found its final shape. This choice favors coherence over applause, depth over display. Creation is not a harmless offering to the world. It is a burden loaded with uncertainty. To bring something new into existence is to subject it to misunderstanding, interruption, and the constant pull of external influence. Genuine originality demands isolation, patience, and the strength to resist interference that feels tempting, precisely because it promises approval. Happiness, Schopenhauer noted, is difficult to locate within oneself, but it cannot be found anywhere else. Most human wants are not self-generated. They are installed, encouraged, reinforced by systems that profit from dependency, even as they weaken the individual. Nowhere is this more visible than in the demand to always be connected, always visible, always affirmed. From early life onward, people are trained to fear solitude. They are taught that being alone signals deficiency, while constant engagement signals worth. Family, culture, and media elevate those who are perpetually surrounded. The message is relentless. Without attention, without validation, life is empty. This conditioning serves society far better than it serves the individual. Collective systems rely on minds that align, that seek reassurance, that exchange inner judgment for external consensus. They benefit from people occupied with noise, obligation, and expectation. Individuals who abandon solitude abandon the only environment where independent thought can survive. What society requires are creators who hesitate, who soften their vision, who reshape their ideas to avoid standing apart. Schopenhauer would describe such a person plainly. Anyone who ties their happiness to approval has surrendered sovereignty. Dependence replaces self-rule. The one who pursues admiration or constant company is not exercising freedom. He is following instructions. He becomes a replica of the group, exchanging his own mind for borrowed certainty. This is the essence of conformity. Most people chase what others chase. Their lives are spent exhausting themselves in pursuit of desires they never authored. The reflective mind notices something unsettling. Social demand and philosophical truth rarely align. The collective urges continuous interaction because sameness sustains it. Thought flourishes only when interruptions cease. Society claims that popularity and recognition are fulfillment. Philosophy reveals that fulfillment comes from comprehension and autonomy. Society promises meaning through connection. Philosophy uncovers meaning through insight, restraint, and the courage to stand apart. The questioning mind eventually asks what others never do. Do I truly need constant affirmation to feel stable? What do I actually gain by molding myself to expectation? Does this compliance sharpen my thinking, or does it quietly enslave it? What would emerge if I stopped seeking permission to exist? To place thought above approval is a deliberate act. To value the cultivation of your mind over social demand is a declaration of independence. Choose reflection over reaction, creation over conformity, silence over noise. Protect the space where ideas can grow uncorrupted. Choose the freedom to think and build in solitude rather than sacrificing your inner world to the pressure of the crowd. Isolation is the ground from which exceptional thought grows. Yet most people never face a crucial fact: the fragmentation of their attention and the erosion of their independence were not unavoidable accidents. They were welcomed in. The moment you began seeking affirmation, allowing external voices to steer your decisions, measuring your thinking against constant commentary, you were no longer exercising autonomy. You were being molded by what Schopenhauer identified as the quiet pressure of collective expectation. He saw this mechanism with precision. Communities do not restrain the mind through force, but through routine and praise, fostering reliance where self-direction should exist. Any accomplishment built on external approval stands on unstable footing. Your work will rarely be valued as you intend. Your vision will not survive intact. It will be altered, softened, redirected by other people's preferences. Your effort may go unnoticed, misunderstood, or even provoke resentment. To let approval define purpose is a foundational error. Meaning does not originate in applause. It emerges from what you generate inwardly. What lasts is not obedience to expectation, but the force of independent insight. Endurance belongs to ideas you develop in private, not to the attention briefly granted by the many. This understanding matters because life itself is asymmetric. Others will pursue their own directions. They will build their ambitions, shape their priorities, and move on. Your influence over them is temporary, but the way you discipline your mind, guard your attention, and direct your creative energy shapes decades, not moments. Solitude is not an emptiness to fear. Schopenhauer expressed this with brutal clarity when he described the passage of truth, first mocked, then resisted, finally accepted as obvious. The mind flourishes not by conforming to expectation, but by claiming the stillness where independent judgment can survive. The richer a person is internally, the less he requires from the external world, and the less power others hold over him. When social pressure no longer dictates your choices, and you recognize your life as truly your own, authenticity increases, strength accumulates, understanding deepens. Inner power is not demonstrated through popularity or dependence. It reveals itself in clarity of thought, autonomy of action, and the freedom to cultivate ideas without permission. Real fulfillment is sensed, not explained. It is visible in how someone moves through life, in the weight and coherence of their presence, in the absence of desperation for validation. Schopenhauer located lasting satisfaction in independence itself. When a person does not rely on others, the mind is free to follow its own direction. The dependent mind, by contrast, narrows to a single obsession: how it appears to others. Every decision demands justification. Every thought seeks endorsement. Every opportunity is filtered through anticipated reaction. A reflective mind operates differently. It sustains multiple centers of attention. It develops itself when growth is required. It explores ideas when curiosity demands it. It creates when inspiration arrives. It seeks understanding when conditions call for depth. This breadth of focus is the mark of wisdom, not selfishness, not avoidance, but responsibility exercised deliberately. The highest intelligence is not learning how to satisfy expectations. It is learning how to stand alone and think without assistance. The more a person governs himself, the less control others possess over him. Strength of self is forged by living according to internal law. In silence, identity becomes visible. Solitude exposes what is essential. As Schopenhauer observed, anyone who cannot tolerate being alone cannot truly value freedom, because freedom exists only where there is no audience. This inward path is both defiance and discovery, a refusal to submit to collective pressure, and an unveiling of inner capacity. Schopenhauer's reflections compel a reconsideration of what it means to exist meaningfully. The self is not a puzzle to be solved once, but a terrain to be explored continuously. Thought by thought, perception by perception, the inner narrative unfolds. The final insight is humbling. All certainty contains ignorance. And the highest form of understanding is not dominance of knowledge, but awareness of its limits.